Tonight on Korea Times, we'll be looking into a rising global race, the race of EVs. The stronger consensus between nations to come across new sources of energy seems more demanded than ever. Of all, there has been a relatively recently introduced, yet drastically developing sector in the energy plants, the electric vehicles. The race for the EV market's dominance between nations is anticipated to be ever higher than before, with the ongoing war and the fluctuation of the oil prices. The predominant powerhouses of the EV markets are in the order of EU, China, the US, and South Korea. However, there seems to be a shift of paradigm on the EV market. There is an anticipated outlook on Europe shifting plans on electric vehicles, which could further affect the rest of the nations on the list. First, let's look at the future of Europe's EV market and their changing stance towards the industry. For more on this, we go to reporter Choi.
Europe, especially Germany, a nation with a strong reliance on the internal combustion engine, is attempting an interesting approach. Germany's position in the global internal combustion engine market has been great, with the automobile industry accounting for 20% of the total economy. However, with the European Union deciding to ban the sales of internal combustion engines by 2035, this sudden acceleration of the transition to EVs is definitely unfavorable to Germany. Thus, Germany is developing hydrogen-based liquid fuel to maintain the traditional vehicles for as long as they can, since the carbon emissions are generated from fuel combustion when making power. This move clearly shows the EU's efforts not to miss out on both internal combustion engines and EVs.
Okay, so could there have been effects of other nations that, in a way, led the EU to take such a stance on electric vehicles?
Yes, as the undeniable leading nation in the EV industry with abundant resources, China. Analysts predict that China will match the EU's EV production and eventually take the lead, partly because of the massive market size and the government policies to support both EV consumers and manufacturers. The Chinese government is pushing a plan to transition all automobiles to electric or hybrid cars by 2035. In terms of the global EV sales in 2020, China has outnumbered the US by far, and China is expected to account for at least half of the total global vehicle sales due to strong government orders and ample resources.
I see. China really seems eager to dominate the market. But how does this affect Korea, a nation that also contains the capability of creating its own EV batteries? For more on this, we go to reporter Do.
Korea is definitely a nation that the world is keeping an eye on, with LG Energy Solution, Samsung SDI, and SK On taking the lead in the world battery market. It has risen as one of the world's top 3 battery manufacturing countries, but failed to meet expectations as the global market share of Korean EV batteries fell behind China and Europe last year. Still, Korea showed an outstanding market share of 57% in 2021 and maintained the world's #1 position, excluding the Chinese market. In addition to batteries, Korea also ranks 4th in global EV production rate, with the current Korean EV market being mainly dominated by Hyundai Motor Company and Tesla. The attention lies on how the introduction of Chinese and European EVs will affect the status quo of the Korean EV market.
Okay, so definitely a nation to keep an eye on there. We briefly mentioned Tesla. Tesla in the US definitely sparked an innovation towards the EV market. How are they doing right now?
You can't talk about EVs without mentioning Tesla and the US. The Biden administration is serious about carbon reduction. To achieve this goal, the US is planning to increase the number of EVs and its facilities. Senate Democrats recently unveiled the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which could help reduce carbon emissions by roughly 40% by 2030. This bill includes significant changes to the existing EV tax credit, which was capped and phased out after a manufacturer had sold 200,000 EVs in the US. Since America is already in 3rd place in the global EV market thanks to Tesla and GM, the number 200,000 seems undersized. The new credit is not capped by the automaker, which allows more subsidies for more EV consumers.
So who will win the race? Only time will tell. This has been Korea Times. Thank you.